Hello guys, welcome back, and in this video we are going to see how we can implement toast message and in our Vue application. For that we are going to make a custom toast component. So without wasting much time, let's get into code and we will start creating the respective component. Right? Previously we saw how can we create component, and the same logic we are going to apply over here, and we will create a custom component that is highly flexible and that is modular so that you can reuse it anywhere you want in your Vuejs application. Alright, so let me first go into client folder and then coming back to components folder, and there what I'll say is let's create a file, and this time I'm going to name this file as app toast, not toast but toast, right? And then I'll say app toast.view, right? So I'll just click enter, and then very first thing, we all know that we should define the template over there. So I'm going to create a template over here so that I will have all those design present inside the template, right? So template we have here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a script as well so that we can import couple of component that is coming from, of course, Vue Ionic in this case. So if you're using some other component, you can of course do that, you are free to do that. This is how we can make sure like our app toast is basically abstracted, implementation is abstracted, and everywhere you are going to use the app toast only. Alright, so without talking much, let me just use a script tag over here, and then I'm just going to import couple of, so very first thing what I'm going to do here is I'll say export default, and we are going to say name of the component. So this time it's going to be app toast. All right, and then next thing what I'm going to do here is I'll say I need iron toast, not here but that should be inside components, right? Since we are going to use the Ionic component, so I'll say iron toast. All right, and then I'll say iron icon as well if we need icon over there. So I'll say icon as well. So both of the component you can see here is imported successfully. And then what else we are going to do? Okay, let's first design our template, right? So what here we are going to say, I'm going to use teleport. And what does teleport means? If you guys is not aware of teleport is a tag in Vue.js, okay? And using teleport, what we can do is all the elements that we are going to define here inside the teleport will get, teleported to some other, either it's going to be teleported to body, or if wherever you want, you can just teleport this specific element, bundle of that element, okay? So let's say you want a model. So model should be, of course, it should be on the very parent, right? Parent means it should be on the base page, right? It should be showing on overall, it should be showing basically on the top of all those UI components and UI pages, right? So basically what we can say, okay, just transport, not transport, but the teleport this model to the body so that it will be, on top of each of that page, right? So here we need to say, okay, where you want to teleport it. So I'll say the element name, not element, but you need to just say the tag name. This time I'm going to say body, okay? So this model will get opened on body, okay? And next here what I'm going to do is I'm going to use iron toast, of course, which we have exported down below. And here I'll say, okay, that's fine. Not here, but here I'll say, let me just click it here, and then we are going to use couple of props here that iron toast component expect. So I'll say, okay, let's toggle it using is open functionality, okay? And from where this will be coming, so for that we are going to maintain a variable, okay? If that variable is true, then that means this app toast will get visible, okay? If that is false, means of course this will get hidden. So where shall we actually define that variable? We cannot define that here, since then we have to import the, of course this we need to import this, but then we need to access those variables using reference, and then we need to make it true or false, right? We are not going to do that. Instead, what I will say is we can handle this using the global state. Okay, and how we can do that? We know that our global state is nothing but the Vuex. So for that we need a stored variable over there, right? So instead of auth store and book store, I'll say okay, create a variable, let's say here. Okay, so I'll say okay, since you can see here we have two different store, auth store as well as book store, right? So if you want, you can create a separate common store as well, which will be commonly available for auth store as well as auth functionality as well as book functionality. And even if you are going to create a new functionality as well, for that also that store will be available, right? But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to define that here in the main store itself, right? So not main store, let's do that on common store itself. Why should we do this? Since we are going to follow certain design pattern, we are going to use it in a very modular way, right? So let's do that here. Why to skip that, right? What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to create one common, I'll say common store, right? And then inside this common store we'll have all those files. So I'll just say copy this all, okay, and then I'm just going to say paste it inside common store, right? But we'll remove all those functionalities from here so that we don't need that. What I'll say is okay, just remove this all. I just need couple of function over there and it should work in the expected way, right? For that, what I will say is let's do very first thing, just go inside state, and there we need to define couple of variables. So this time we don't need, of course, this books and all, right? So this time what I'm going to say is just create one toast variable, right? And this toast, of course, it depends on you how you want to access those, but then I am defining it as an object so that we can have couple of more properties, and based on those properties we are going to, of course, design our model, or you can say we are going to do a lot more operation on the specific app toast component. Okay, so very first thing is I'll say visibility. So I'll say visible, and then by default it is going to be false. Okay, and then it will have a message as well, the message which we are going to display over there. So I'll say message, and by default message will be empty. And then I'll say position, okay, and then position is going to be top. I'll say top, all right. And couple of more property I'm going to define here is default, let's say timeout, default timeout in millisecond, all right. So I'll say here 5000, let's say after 5 seconds this message will automatically disappear. That app toast element or app toast component will get disappeared from the screen, right? So that's what we are doing, we will be doing here. And then I'll say type is going to be success or error, or if let's say we are going to say okay, this message is for successful, so we'll be showing, let's say, green over there, right? Green background color for this specific message. But for error we should show red. So for that we'll say type is going to be error, and then accordingly we'll apply those CSS class, right? So that is it for this. And then of course we have a state over there, and then we'll go back in action, right? So action, we should have a method that will change this state. So here I'll say okay, create one toggle toast method, all right. And of course this will have commit, and we'll be sending those options here as well, so that based on these options that a specific functionality will work. Now before doing this we need a functionality here as well as a mutation, so that we should be able to mutate a state from the mutation. We know that we cannot directly mutate the state variable. Instead we need to mutate it using mutation, and for doing so we need to commit the mutation as well, right? So here what I'm going to say is okay, you want to toggle the state, so I'll say set toast state, right? Anyway, this depends on you what naming convention you want to follow. You can follow that. I'm just for mutation, I'm following this naming convention. Okay, all of it's going to be capital and then with underscore. So here I'll say okay, just provide the payload. Payload is nothing which is going to be option, and then what I'll say here is state dot toast, not toast equals to, it is going to be state dot toast, so that we can preserve all those default properties over there. Okay, and then I'll say whatever payload you are providing here. Okay, that's cool. And then what we are going to say is okay, just set timeout as well, so that the specific functionality will get triggered and the message will get disappeared from the screen as well. So for that I'm going to say okay, all right. So here I'm going to say state dot toast. Even this is not required at all, but in worst case, let's say that functionality is not working, that is not getting hidden, then this set timeout will actually force that component to be hidden. Okay, so I'll say set toast equals to, and then here I'll say visible is going to be false. All right, and then message and everything will set up here. So I'll say message is going to be empty, right? And then position, right? Position is going to be of course top, right? This is completely option, you can omit this. This is actually not required, but I'm using this in the worst case scenario, if that function, because of breaking on certain functionality, that won't be getting triggered, right? In that case, this set timeout will actually do its works. So default timeout in, let's say, millisecond, and here I'll say again 5000, and then finally I'll have type as success, right? And then what's next? What next we need to do here is, of course, this should be timed out based on the functionality, right? So I'll say this much of millisecond is going to be taken. So I'll say either it will take default timeout in millisecond, and if it is not there, then by default you need to use, let's say, 3000. Okay, so now we are done with this set toast state, and then I'll just copy this and I'll go back in action. Here I'll just commit this, right? And then I'm going to pass this option. This is how we are going to define our actions method, right? And we all know that from where this commit is coming, we know that this is nothing but actually Vuex is injecting its context over here, and then using context we can destructure those commit function or dispatch function if we want, right? Simple. So now we are almost done with that, and then finally we need a getter as well for that functionality, right? So in this case what I'll say is, I'll go back here, not here but in the getters, and here I'll say get toast config. All right, so I'll say get toast config, and then the variable name I can say toast, and here I'll say inside getter, or I'll just say get toast. Okay, so I'll return the same configuration, and using that we should be able to trigger those methods and it should be working fine in the expected way, right? So we have get toast method over there, but this time it's common store. Of course we created a store now, but this store should be mapped in the main store, right? And where we can do that, we need to go back here. First let's verify we have all those actions. We don't need API over here, this is not required as of now, but if later we need that, we'll do that. All right, so getter is also there, mutation also we have, but storage service we don't need as of now, so I'll remove it from here, save it, and then index.js, this is completely fine. Now finally we'll go in this main index.js, and then we'll register those functionality over there. I will just do copy paste, and then this time I'm going to say it is going to be common store, right? So common store, then this book store won't be there, it will be common store, right? That is the folder name, and then of course it will be importing all those actions, getters mutation as and state as well from the index.js file, right? Then finally we can say here, okay, common store should also be there, and I'll say dot dot dot, I'll destructure this, spread this common store, and then not destructure but I'll just spread it, all those property inside this common store, and then I'll say okay, namespace true. That means you should be able to access this specific store using its name. So I'll say save. Now this functionality is completed. We have successfully registered our common store, and we should be able to use this common store anywhere we want in the program. Let's do that now. First, before that, we are going to design it here. So what I'm going to do here is I'll go back here, and here I'll say okay, let's define couple of computed property, not couple of, but I'll say okay, for that what we need is we need map getters, right? This is how we can import map getters, and this time this getter we are taking it from common store, right? So I'll say Vuex, import it from Vuex, and then we should have a computed property over there so that this we can map this getter function to the specific computed property, right? So I'll say okay, use this map getters now, and then first parameter always we are going to say is going to be the store name. So I'll say common store, and then second parameter is object. Why I'm defining object here, why I'm using object here, because using the object you can put the alias name for the specific method which is present over there, right? But if you want array format, you can just put array here as well instead of object, and then you should just use the same name which you have defined over there. It will be working in the expected way, right? But here I have flexibility of defining it with alias name. That's why I'm using object notation here. You are free to use the array symbol as well, and then see how it works. Okay. So that's it for now, and then I'm going to say okay, we have get toggle function over there. So let me go back to getter and get not toggle, get toast. So it's better we can say get toast state, that is actually more defining. Okay, so I'll say get toast, and I'll go back here. Here I'll say okay, let's define the name get toast state, fine, and then we have computed property over there. So finally we need map action as well, so that we can trigger those toggle toast, right? Or even we don't need that actually. Okay, why we don't need that? We don't need that, is it? No, we need that actually. Why? Because let's say we are showing the toggle toast and we are giving default time of let's say 5 seconds. But as a user, I don't want to see that anymore. I just before 5 seconds, I want to close that modal. How can we do that? For that, we need a toggle functionality. We need to show cross button so that once we'll click the cross button, it will just go away, right? So for that, of course, we need map actions so that we can we can map that action method over here, and using that we should be able to change the toggle state, right? Instead of map action, you can also use map mutation directly. But since I made this function, I'm going to use map actions here, okay? And for that, I need methods here, right? So here what I'm going to say, all right, just map those methods, map actions methods, and then you need to provide the store name. So I'm going to provide a store name over here as a common store, and then again object notation object here, and then here I'm going to say okay, what is the exact method name which we define in the action, that is toggle toast. So I'll go back here, and then I'll say okay, toggle toast, and the method name also I'm going to use the same. If you want to alias it with a different name, you can of course do that. You're free to do that, right? So then we have toggle toast method. Finally what we will do is we'll define a toggle method over here. Okay, I'll say toggle, right? And then here what I'm going to say is value. All right, and value is why I'm going to make this toggle function explicitly, because let's say someone want to access this app toast using reference. right? And then on that reference this method should be available, so that they should be able to trigger this method manually and it will do its job, right? That is how we are going to make it, and it should be then highly flexible. So what I'm going to say here is, okay, just call this toggle toast function which we have mapped from action, and then provide all those functionalities over here as an option, right? So I'll say, okay, visible is going to be, of course, visible is going to be what? Of course this value, right? Or you can just, instead of value, you can say visibility, right? That makes more sense. So be specific about the words which you are using so that it will be more descriptive. And then visibility is fine. So message, what I'm going to say is, okay, message, if you want you can give message as well, so I'll give option for message as well, right? So but this time I'm going to say, okay, default message is empty. Even if you won't be providing the message, there won't be any issue. So I'll say, okay, just you can provide the message as well. And then I'll say default timeout in millisecond, right? And this I'm going to keep constant as a 5000. Later on if we want to change, we can change that, but we are giving flexibility to toggle this functionality and we can show the specific message. But I want to give one more functionality over here as a type, and then type is going to be again empty. Okay, so I'll say type, okay, type, and then it will use the type. Fine. So basically they can explicitly say, okay, this is going to be success, so make it true, visible is true, message is going to be of success, so just show a toast over there and it will be showing in a green color, right? That's what we are expecting. So save it. Now we have this almost component ready, and then I'll just assign couple of props here. So I'll say, okay, this props will actually, this prop should actually depend on where. It should depend on what, not where. It should depend on this state, right? But this state will have an object, and that object actually contains the visible property, right? So I'll say visible, right? And then we need to say, okay, you need to display some message over there as well. So I'll say message, and then I'll just copy this, right? And then I will paste it here. Okay, so this is going to display message, so I'll say message, right? And we need to say duration. So after this duration, automatically this will get closed. So I'll say okay, and thing is going to be default timeout in millisecond, right? And then I will say one more thing, use this position, right? So I'll say, okay, not this, let me just open this. All right, so here I'll say, okay, use the position as well, since we have defined this position on the state variable, right? And then we are providing or changing this position. So next what I'm going to say is position anchor. So where you exactly want to position this, right? Now this, what this will do, till here we know that what will happen is open will just toggle this, right, based on this visible property, and then message is also there. Those message will be visible over there, and it will display for this specific duration. Let's say after 5 seconds this automatically will get this appeared. And then position also we understand, okay, this position is going to be on the top, it is going to show on the top. But what this position anchor is, so position anchor is nothing, we are going to provide the specific, we are going to provide a specific tag over here, so that this position will get anchored to the specific tag. And for example, what I'm going to say is, let's say just assume this as a header, or assume this as a tab tag. Okay, so if I'll say here tab, what this, where this iron toast will get visible, this will just get visible top of this tab, all right? That means it is going to be visible here, right? That is position anchor. That means you are going to say, okay, you need to hang it here, right? That is position anchor. So I'm going to say, okay, you need to use it, or you need to anchor it in the header. Okay, and then I have flexibility to assign a class as well, and this time I'm going to say toast, right? Toast is, of course, it will get applied, and then I'll say get toast state dot type, right? Or I'll say success. If there's no type, that means we are going to say success, right? And then if this method, this iron toast will get closed, so there's one event which will get fired from this iron toast. And how can we capture those events? We know that we just need to say @ and then the event name, right? And in this case it will be did dismiss, that means it got closed. And then I'm going to say toggle, right, false. Okay, just make it false, right? And then we have this props provided. Now finally here what I'm going to say is, okay, and inside those toast what should be there? So I'll say let's pass certain functionality in the message. Okay, so here what I'm going to say, okay, this time we all know that how we have used slot, named slot as well as a single slot, right? So I'll say, okay, just use hashtag and then give the name of the slot. This is also one way to define a named slot, not define but to use a named slot. So whatever we'll give inside this template will get injected into this specific slot which is present on iron toast. And if you're not aware of what is slot, you do watch my previous videos and you will easily understand how the slot is working. Alright, so now here what I'm going to say is div, right, and I will say toast content so that we can design it, and I'll press enter. Here I'll say, okay, just show toast message, and those message will get visible over here. So I'll use message, right, and then I'll say, okay, actually I think this message here itself it will be working, but let's see if that this also works. Okay, and then we need iron icon as well over there, so I'll say iron icon, right? And here what I'm going to say is I'm going to assign a couple of props. I'll say name equals to close circle. Okay, this should actually show the close circle icon. Alright, and then here what I'm going to say is just assign this CSS class close button. Alright, and then next I'm going to attach one listener over here, and here I'm going to say toggle equals to false, right? So this should be actually this specific app toast will get toggled and it will be false in this case, and then we won't be that specific component won't get visible. That means app toast won't be visible anymore, right? So we are good with this now. Let me just save it, and then let's check if we are missing something. Okay, we need those CSS class as well here. So what I'm going to say is, or we can define a scoped style, we can say style, and then here we need to say, okay, it need to be a scope. That means this specific class, CSS class, will only be applied on this specific component, right? So here I'm going to say, okay, toast, right, and here I'll say background is going to be transparent by default, okay, and then color is going to be white. And position should be fixed. All right, and I'll say, okay, from the top we are going to use 1 rem, okay, and right also we are going to say 1 rem, okay, and then z index, let's make it big so that it will be on the top of all other element. So I'll say, let's say 9999. All right, and then display is going to be inline block, so it will show as per content only. It should show as per content, right? This is just a CSS. You can play with this and you can design it in the way you want. Okay, so I'll say content, right? And I'll say display is going to be flex this time. Okay, align items is going to be in center, and justify content is going to be space between. Justify content is going to be a space between. Okay, so that one element will be on left and one element will be on the right, and in this case of course message and then the icon, right? So now next what we need is we need close button as well. So I'll say close button, right? And then not button, it's button, right? And here I'm going to say okay, there should be some margin from the left side, right? So I'll say margin left, and it's going to be 1 rem, for example, and I'll say cursor is going to be pointer, right? And font size I'm going to say, let's say 1.5 rem, right? And color is going to be inherit. Okay, it will inherit the color of its parent. Cool. Next what we need to do is we need to define a couple of more class over there. We can see here type, success, error, and all those things, right? So we will say okay, just do this. On toast I'm going to say success should also be there, and in case of success I'm going to say okay, background color is going to be green, right? And then of course color is going to be white. So you can play with these values and you can hang around this so that you will get a clear idea like how CSS is working and design is working, right? But here we are just more focused on the component instead of its design. Of course we'll make a design as per standards, but then once more I'm going to say that we are more towards functionalities, right? So I'll say here error, and then I'll copy paste it here, and in case of error we should show, not error, we should show red background, right? But the color is going to be white in this case as well. And then we'll define a couple of more CSS class here. Here what I'm going to say, we should have a warning as well over there. So I'll say okay, warning will also be there as a type, and in the case of warning just show yellow color as a background, right? But let's make it a bit more deep so that text is clearly visible over yellow color, right? So this color will be fine, I believe. And then we'll have info as well. So if you want to show some info text, that means there has to be nothing with the error or warning. So we can show the, actually error spelling is wrong, so I'll say error, right? Now here I'm just going to say okay, just show info, right? Info means nothing, but you are just going to show information of a certain message. So in that case I'm going to say okay, it will be of color blue, and then of course background is going to be white, right? So let me just save it, and we are done with that app toast, right? Now we need, finally we need to use this component so that we can see okay, we are getting error or we are getting success response, right? So what I'll do here is I'll just go back in app.view, right? And why I'm going to use this on app.view, because we cannot make this, we cannot import this component all over the places in our, in whole of the application where we are using this, right? Either in components or in page. That is not the good way of doing that. Instead we should just import this at a single places, which is of course going to be application, main application, right? Main page, and then after that it should be working fine, right? So here I'll go back in, so app.view, okay, we are on app.view, and here I'm going to say okay, import that specific component. So it will be import, I'm going to import it here. So I'll say import, not import, it will be auto imported. I just need to type that in component, so that we don't need to write import, it will just auto import. So I'll say app toast, and you can see we have app toast over there, and it's getting imported automatically. I'll just take it over this import map mutation, and then here I believe we are good. We don't need to do anything over here. Okay, we just need to use that app component here, not app toast, sorry. So here what I'll do is I'll just use this app toast, right, and then I'll just close this tag. Let me save it. And now how can we test this, right? So for that, let's go back in view interface. Of course you should be able to use this anywhere in your program, but since I don't need everywhere in the page, right, I don't need to trigger functionality related to this message everywhere in the page, and I need only where it is required, right? So for that I'm going to do that in interceptor, because most of the time we will be handling the APIs, we'll dealing with the APIs, and if we'll trigger APIs, either we will be getting the success response or else we will be getting error response. So for that we need to show some message, and API can be triggered from any of the pages, right, any of the components. So this should be actually a centralized, it should be used in a centralized file, so that for each of the API we don't have to define it everywhere, and it should actually work from a single point. And what is that single point? That is what we need to find. And in this case, of course, we have view interceptor, which is a single point. And how can we say that? Because we know that any request which is coming out from our application has to go from this view interceptor. View will intercept this request, Axios will intercept this request, and then finally it will do sugar coating or whatever it wants to add into the specific request, and then it will go out finally. That means there is the filter point, and if we'll implement this functionality over there, then it will be working fine, right? Not only in case of request, but it will be working in case of response as well. If it is giving error response, all the response will get intercepted at interceptor, and then our toast should be working fine. So let's do that, and we should be able to see that it's working fine. So what I'll do is, that's why, and that is exactly why we have provided a store in this interceptor as well, so that using a store we should be able to trigger those toggle toast functionality. Now you got it, right? That is the benefit of creating a modular code, benefit of injecting the data from outside. Okay, so here I'm going to say, okay, in case of 201, right, you just need to show some message. And how you can show message? You just need to say, okay, store dot. Now here comes a question, how we are going to call that a specific store, right? Because in the component, if I'll go back in any of the component, or let's say page, I'll go back here and we can see, okay, we are accessing those getters or actions using map getters and map actions, right? But then that is only accessible inside a component or in a page. That should be a view page or view component. But here we have plain JS file, so we won't be having access of map getters and map actions over here. Then how we will call the specific store and then call the respective function, right? So we don't have to worry about that. What it is saying is, of course, we are providing the overall store, right? And this store is actually having all those splitted small different modules, right? So this time we need to call a function that is present on common store, right? So this overall store will have a function that is dispatch, all right? And what this dispatch will do, any action method which we are going to call, will call it using dispatch. Or else if I want to call mutation method here, I will say, what should I say? Instead of dispatch, I need to use something different, right? I should use basically commit to call mutation method, right? But since we made action method to toggle the toast, we are going to use dispatch over here. Okay, so we have used dispatch, but then how we can access those specific store? because we have all the three stored over there: auth store, book store, and the common store. So we need to say, okay, you need to go in the common store. I'll say store name and then slash, and then I'm going to say toggle toast, right? That means this toggle toast we are not going to write directly over there, because then the store will get confused where this toggle toast exists, because this toggle toast may exist in all of these three store, right? Because of that we need to say explicitly, okay, you need to search for this method inside common store. So I'll just paste, I'll say, okay, first you need to define a common store here, not this common store but the store name, and then slash, and then the function name, not function but the action's name, right? Of course that is function, but here in this case I'm going to call it action, right? So now we need to pass the parameter, not parameter but the data as well, since this action is expecting some data, right? So here what I'll say, okay, message, it needs message over there, so I'll say, okay, response, message will be coming from response, we all know that, right, from the API response. So I'll say, okay, response dot data, okay, and if message is there, so it will display message, or else it will just display success. Cool. And then visibility of course should be visible, should be true, so that it will get visible on the UI and we should be able to see that message. And then of course in this case type is going to be success. I don't want to provide default timeout, since 5 seconds is, I think it's pretty longer, so that we should be able to read all those messages which is showing as a toast, right? This is it. We are done with writing this functionality, right? And then this is in case of success message only. What will happen in case of error? In case of error also we need to handle those cases, right? So what I'll do here is I'll just copy paste this from here. All right, so I'll just copy it from here and I'll paste it. So in case of error also we should be able to categorize those response, right? So in this case I'm going to say, okay, response code is going to be now not status code, but it is going to be a error dot config. All right, and then it is going to be inside data, and then status code will be there. So all the response which is getting returned from the server, in case of error, those response will be coming inside the error.config. That is how Axios made it. Okay. So for avoiding the error, I'll say, okay, if it's not getting returned, just put optional chaining over there, so that we won't be getting any error at runtime, right? Now it will switch for the response, and then I can say, okay, I'm going to define couple of case, right? Let's say I'm going to define 400, 401, right? I'm sorry. And then here we don't need to say success. Instead we'll say, okay, I'll say, what should I say? In case of 401, it is unauthorized. So I'll say, okay, unauthorized, authorized access, right? Unauthorized access. That's fine. You can define whatever you want. Okay. So now in this case, we cannot say like this, right? We need to say, okay, let me just define message over here. Okay. And the message will be coming inside, of course, in the message. So here I'll say, okay, error.config, right? Error.config, no, not config. Now the message will be coming inside error.response.data.error, and then the message. Okay. If it doesn't work, you need to just play with these values. You need to debug these values, like where exactly those messages are coming, and then it should be working fine. So I'm just going to assign the message over here. Instead of writing this full, I'll say message, right? and then by default unauthorized access. And now in this case, if 401 is there, right, we should say okay, toggle toast will be there, and then finally if you are unauthorized, right, you should be redirected back to login, right? That's the expectation. But before redirecting, I should say you need to clear all the storage as well. So I'll say store dot, right, and this time I'm going to say dispatch, but this time what I'm going to say is okay, we need to clear all the authentication data. And how can we do that? Let's go back in action. That method is not present there, so let's go back in mutations. Clear data is there, right? So I'll just call this method and it should clear whole storage, right? So I'll just use this function mutation over here. Then this time I'm not going to use dispatch. This time I'm going to say okay, store dot commit, and then you need to commit this mutation method, right? And data we don't need, of course, just it will just clear those data, right? And finally, if that is done, what we need to do is we need to redirect to the login page. That is what our expectation is, right? So let's say I'll say okay, set timeout, and then redirect to the login page. For that we need router access as well, then only we can push for those pages, correct? That's why we have accepted router over here, right? You got it, right? So now I'll say here okay, router, not here router, I'll say okay, after 500 millisecond, right, you need to use router dot push, okay, and then you need to redirect to login. But if you are already on login page, right, then this will go in infinite loop, right? So for avoiding that case, I will say okay, just put it inside a function, not function but the condition. And how can we check for the condition, right? We can say if I can say first take out the route. So I'll say constant route equals to, right, and yeah, constant route equals to, then what I'm going to say is await router dot resolve. So this router is having one function resolve which will give you all the route access. That means if you are aware of, we have used this dot dollar route, right, the same thing will get here route, right? But this time we don't need to use this since we get route from router dot resolve method, right? This router is actually giving us promise, correct? Now if that is the case, then I'll say just if route dot full path, it is having a full path property, okay, and then I'll say includes, if that includes slash login, that means you are already on login page, okay, and you just need to make sure like okay, this is actually your login page. I'm just simply saying okay, if login is there means it is login page. You can put more validation over there so that it won't get mugged up with the other functionality as well, okay? So if that is the case, if that is not the case, you are not on login page, then only push it to login page. Cool. So instead of 500 milliseconds, just cut it from here. Why should we put inside set timeout, right? I'll just click save, and then finally what I'm going to do is I'll cut all these and put it inside a block so that it is more readable, correct? Now so far what we did, I think you are all able to get it, you are able to relate it and understand it. If you guys are facing any issues, please let me know in the comment section. I will try to answer all of those queries as early as possible, okay? So we are just done with the one cases. We can have multiple status as well there. It's in case of 401, but let's say 500 will also be there in case anything happens. Let's say if any error occurs which is not related to code, it is unexpected happens, there's no custom error, right, for that. So in that case what will happen, we'll be getting 500. So let's handle for 500, right? Same thing we'll be doing here, but this time we'll say okay, internal server error, right? Message will be there, of course, visibility will be there, but here we need to make changes. It is not no more going to be success, it is going to be error. So we'll say error, and here also we are going to say error. Okay, now in case of 500 we don't need to use this code because we don't need to clear any data. It may happen a specific functionality may actually break, right? So next, what I'm going to do is let me 501 is there, that's completely fine, and then 500 will also be there, 401, okay, 501 is there, not 501, but in this case 500 should be there. Let me just save it, all right, and then 401 500 is fine, and I think we are good with this. So we are completely done with this interceptor and the messages, right? So finally what we'll be doing is we'll just test this functionality if this will work or not, and those will be testing in the upcoming videos. Thank you guys, and we'll meet in the next video.